Okay, hello everyone. So just tell me in the chat if there's any problem with the sound. Okay. Okay, I'll start talking now. So yeah, that sounds good. That's great. Um, it's Iyama versus Li Qincheng. As close as I can come. I know that the Q is sounds sort of like a CH sound. So it's Li Qincheng, or the final vowel, the E is probably a little bit different. But he got into this tournament because he was one of the top players. So um, slightly younger than some of the other Chinese players, I suppose. And Iyama actually is the first player in this tournament to have consecutive wins. So it was no one was winning more than one game at a time until Iyama won these two games. So it's a chance maybe for Japan to move ahead in the tournament. But if Lee wins, it'll be just two people left for every country, I believe. Yes. And of course, Korea has two Sheens left. So that sounds strong. Let's go back to the beginning of the game and see how. Um, Throughout the whole tournament, we're seeing Iyama seems to be avoiding the star point, not allowing his opponent to take the three points inside. And in this game, um, he's going to take all four corners, isn't he? So White kicks there. This is a Joseki that I've played in my own games. It's a good way for White to finish the upper right corner, the upper left corner with Sente. So in the old times, we would play some kind of a pincer usually, some around here, some around here. And with computer analysis, it's actually really, even at my level, it can get complicated, but I'd say that it's an even fight anyway, but the computers will give black a good score when black presses here. So people tend to avoid that. They can avoid it by playing a close pincer, in which case white will push through and cut when black presses. And that's going to be pretty complicated too. Or white can play one of these moves, in which case black will have a choice of playing towards the side or playing away. And so the Joseki that was chosen in the game is more forceful in that it pretty much forces black to play an extension on the side. And white gets sent it. So moving quickly to dominate, take an advantage in the territory at least. And this was black's opportunity to play away and maybe secure the upper right corner. But he continued locally. And white took another corner. So white's taking all four corners. When I looked at it with Katago, I don't think Katago really liked this for white, but it's a very small difference anyway. So it's okay. Yeah, let's see. Right. Nils Tim is saying that Lee has an unusual style. He's well known for his fast playing. He's a very fast player. In case you didn't notice. And Yama's had white, I believe, in every game so far. This is his third game in the tournament. And this is sort of unusual where, let's see, if white had played here, in this case, maybe black's going to do the same thing here. So something like this. And we can see the right side it's a good size for black. So basically, the right side is pretty big in this game. And white didn't like that, I suppose. So that's an unusual Joseki choice. Locally, it's slightly good for black. Apart from the fact that the upper side, in this game where white has a very solid position in the upper left corner, the upper side is not so important. So that's okay. The fact that black has a slight advantage in the local Joseki in the upper right corner is countered by the fact that black doesn't really have good options to expand on the upper side. And so you can see that sort of spelled out in black's switching to the lower side here, which is the lower side and the left side are both important parts. So you can see black playing like this. When white plays high on the fourth line, the left side is bigger than, for instance, if white had played low. So if white had played low like this, the left side would have been less important. And black would have the option of, I don't know. It would still be an option to play on the left side, but black could play elsewhere, like, for instance, something like this. I wouldn't be surprised if, let's say if white plays here. In this case, there would be the option for black to play something like this. In this case, black might not play the left side. It would be relatively small. So the fact that white played high here has to do with the fact that this move was so big. And if white's going to play here now, then obviously this extra stone, that pillar there, is a bit wasted. So white's whole idea was that white was going to sort of induce black to be playing this move on the left side, and he had an idea of what he wanted to do on the lower side of the board. So that would be this move here. And this move, which came as a surprise. And then black pushed here. That was a surprise too. So if they had played like this, it would have been a big fight. Something like this. And black would probably have room to live in the corner, and white would probably be okay on the side, and it would develop into this huge fight, spreading out from this area. I think black's going to be okay if black does something like this. To simplify it, something like this. So that's the general idea for black. I think black's going to be okay here. I could be wrong. It's a bit it is a complicated situation. But instead, black pushed here, focusing on this area, and white continues here too, and black extends. So this is kind of an interesting. Wow, they are playing very quickly, so I'll have to catch up. This is a point where I was looking at it with Katabo while I was waiting to start the for the timer to stop, and I saw black's score dip a little bit when black, about 10 points I think, when black played here, and black should have played here. And I wanted to talk about the human thing that's happening here when black does not play this covering move at 1. Obviously, the reason that it's good to play 1 is because this makes a base for black on the right side, and so black's group there will be relatively strong. And in the game, when white extends here, black's group does not have a base. That makes it relatively weak. So that's why it was bad for black not to play this covering move. So why would he make such, you might say, a mistake? And there's a good reason. There's a human reason for black not to want to play that covering move. Because later on in the game, black can play an Atari here. And if white captures, black plays here. And this is a kind of a life and death situation. Oh, we're talking about the sponsor's name. So it's Nongshim Shin Ramen, and the shin in the ramen name is it's a hot flavor. So it's spicy ramen is what the way I understand it. So that's the second shin. So yeah. Back to the game. This corner here, it's going to be a ko, whatever white does. But at the same time, it's going to take one more move for black to start the ko. So even if white connects here, black can get an approach move ko. Black has to play an Atari at Q19 to make it a real ko. But it will be a ko. Or if white plays on this side, black can throw in here to get a ko. So whatever white does, it's going to be a ko. White will probably leave it, and black has to start the ko somehow anyway. So black would play stuff like this, and if white plays here, black would throw in here. You can see that if black loses the codes, it's a bit painful on the other side. So in many cases, it's not a good idea for black to do that, because it already cost black an extra move there. So I think the computer idea here is that this attack here towards the corner is a bit too far away for it to be very good. And the other variation is if white connects here, black still has this move, which also tends to make it into a ko. So if white takes here, black can make a ko like this. Or if white plays here, now white does not have two eyes. So if white plays here, it's 4 stones inside. Or if white plays here, it's just the 3 stones. So white's best bet would be to capture. And it takes one move, then another move, and then it's finally a ko. It does take black some extra effort to get to the ko position. Sometimes white just leaves it as it is, and can win the, so like for instance something like this might even possibly win the semi-eye for white. So a fight like this, for instance. Let's see. This is going to be another ko. So let's just have white throw in here at some point. And so this would be bad for black. So yeah, black would have to prepare to make the ko work, and it's a bit far away. So although black has this move, it's not happening immediately. And AIs, the neural network systems, tend to make little of the ko select. They don't give much. They don't seem to give much value to this potential aji, you might say, in the corner. And they value more the real difference in that if black plays here, this is probably more realistic to say that it's more important to have a base on the side here. So this is something that really interested me when I saw Katago give Iyama a good score after getting this extension in the second line. So yeah, I was watching up to this point. Oh wow. Yeah, so here's all those moves that passed while I was talking about that. So white pulled back. There's a little hole here in black's shape. So that's black's connection here. That's fixing the hole. Black still does not have a base on the side. So there's no way for black to live with just one move. Yes. Hello, Catbug. Yes, today I had some time. So let's watch the moves here. So they're running out into the center. White's group in the upper right is pretty much alive. So that group is alive with a cut at the 2-2 point. That's 2R in this diagram. And also a jump at the R10 point is also a way that white could make a second die. So white's completely alive there for the time being. Unless these players, they do tend to ignore each other. So sometimes that will change, the status will change. But for the time being, it's alive. As I was saying, the lower right corner, sometimes it can turn into a ko. So that's not decisive yet. It's not alive yet, really. They're both relatively small territories. They wouldn't even add up to almost 10 points. The upper left is about 10 points for white. The lower left is starting to look like a nice little territory for white. It's somewhere between 10 and 20 points for the time being. So white has close to 30 points, you might say. Black has a position on the left side and a position on the lower side. The territory is actually pretty close. And they both have groups that are not settled in the center of the board. And Iyama likes to take territory and be under attack. He's really good at handling weak groups. And he prefers to have the territory. So yes, this was the Tetsuji for black, where like if black had played something like this, white would have the double peep here, and it would be a bit slower for black. Or if black played here, it would be a relatively slow move. So black plays the attachment. This is a shape move. It's the shape where black can sacrifice the stone to get out into the center. So white gained a tempo by playing that Atari at M9. If white had simply captured, then black would have an extra move to probably play something around here, a more active move. Or to push here. White is weak in the center, so white wants to gain the tempo there, I suppose. And basically it was just a stone. The stone that black captured was a trade for the stone at N10, which is not a very useful stone for black. So that was okay for white to allow the capture there. Okay, so yeah, this move, threatening a hane at, we can do it in a diagram. Okay, well, yeah. Threatening, so if white plays something on this side, black is going to play here. And this would be a kind of a messy shape for white, so it looks like it's playable for black. Gonna be, yeah, well, I'm not sure about that. It could be an even fight. Or if white answers on this side, black can get a good connection. So, yes. So white's playing more actively, trying to stop the connection. So if black does something like this, for instance, it's relatively easy for white to play on this side, and black doesn't have a connection now. Okay, I caught up at last. Okay, someone was giving us the time. Let's see, that's, oh, I'm sorry, I can't read that name. So white, Lee has used 9 minutes and Iyama's used 16. They're both playing very quickly. At 08. Yes, black did play 08. Maybe that was the move that black played, yes. Right, exactly. Thank you, Sandy Barnes. That's correct. Okay. He does like territory. That's Michael Go 361 in Twitch. Yes, Iyama does like territory. Okay, very good. I think I've caught up. And black plays a hane on the top. With this move, black still has a way to connect as it stands. So if white plays on this side, black can still connect here. And this would be connected. And not too much damage in this case. So this is working for black. And white's probably going to continue on this side. So white would have a choice of going straight or diagonally. So I would be looking maybe at this move. This would be a very active move that looks dangerous. So this is one of the choices. Or going more safe move would be this one. And black would probably be playing on this side then. So it's a fight that's going to be hard to understand, but because for the time being, this is pretty active on the lower side, and they've just left white group in the center. We don't really know if it's going to die or not. Okay, so that was the move black was looking at. Yes, bug cat bug. I was actually thinking maybe I would do it if the game was slow today, but that's not happening. Okay, so yeah, in the game yesterday, Iyama, he had a pretty good game throughout, I think. And most of the time it looked like he had a pretty good score with the computer programs. And in the end, he killed a group. So it actually was a sequence that on one of my computers at least, Katago, I think that's an old version of Katago. It's one I haven't renewed very much. But Katago is having trouble seeing the move that killed the black group. And so it was giving black a fairly good score until Iyama played the move. So it was interesting. It seemed to be a kind of a blind spot there. But yes, he had an attack against one of the black groups and he killed it. So that was exciting. The L17 peep. Okay. That's a good point, actually. Nils Ultim is asking, how costly is the L17 peep with respect to the potential bottom right cone? Uh, um, in a way, it reduces the value of the ko for white when black does play it, but it's a bit far away. So what we're talking about here is the idea that when black plays here, and then plays something like this to start the ko, black is going to lose a great deal by this. And it just makes a difference that this will not be a forcing, it will not be an Atari anymore. So there's a slight difference in the amount of territory that white's going to potentially gain by taking this ko. But the immediate value of having that white stone there participating in this fight on the right, on the left that is, that's probably more important. And yes, after all, this ko in the lower right, it takes 2 moves for black to start it, so it's a bit far away in the future. It's not ready to happen quite yet. So in the lower left corner, I believe black's plan is if white plays here, which seems to be a natural move, I think black's going to play here. And for instance, something like this to break through here. This would be a bit of an ugly shape for white. Doesn't look so good. Or if white plays on this side, black can capture. Let's see, which side should black capture from? Maybe from this side. Yeah, so black can capture that. If white pulls back, let's see, if white pulls back, then black does have plenty of ice space. So even locally, black's already alive here when black plays like this. So that would make it easy for black locally. Okay, Sam A is asking, can white sacrifice the lower left corner to attack the black stones in the L column? Maybe the M column, basically these black stones on the right. These black stones, they do have one eye already. And, oh, the black stones on the I column, yes. Those stones, they can come under attack, but for the time being, they're sort of connected to the right. And they have potential to connect to the left. So it's something that's going to happen a little bit further along in this fight in the lower left corner. Sacrificing the group in the lower left corner is an option, but I sort of like the way that white is taking away black's eye space to put more pressure on black. And depending on how it continues, maybe white's going to sacrifice it anyway. So for instance, how is white going to answer if black extends, for instance? So if white is going to answer with something like this, white's not giving anything up. But if white plays something like this, then maybe white's thinking of giving up 2 stones. So this would be, as an idea, it's sort of conceivable. Although I'm not sure Iyama would be doing it that way. The fact that white is played here on the second line, for the time being, it is putting a lot of pressure under black, a lot of pressure on black. Okay. Oh, the top side. That's a good question. Okay. So David Peter is asking, can I explain why the top side is not important? It's an important thing to understand is that, for instance, and we'll just ignore the lower side. The fight on the lower side is really heated up right now. So in order to explain that, we could go back to somewhere around here and say, yeah, maybe one more move even. And say that on the upper side, black probably has a choice of moves like this, or a move like somewhere around here. And so this looks like it's a big opening point. But the problem is that even after black expands here, obviously this is making an area for black, but it's not affecting the group that white has in the upper left corner. So for instance, we might continue like this. This is sort of like, it's just about the limit. This is not even forcing. So this is the limit of how many forcing moves black has there. And basically it would be a completely different story if black had some way to take away the base from this white group in the upper left. But the fact that it's 100% alive here in this variation means that there's no extra value to all of these moves that black is playing in the vicinity. And so it's just simply surrounding an area which is probably going to be a black territory, but it doesn't have any. The added value would be a potential attack or defending a weak group or something like that. And so the fact that those values are not added to the moves that black is playing on the upper side make it a small move. So for instance, white's move also, when white plays a move on the upper side, and let's go back to the same position. When white plays a move on the upper side, for instance, a move like this, it would just be the local territory. So it would be less than 10 points added to white's territory and some indeterminate amount of black's territory. So it's a side move, which makes it big. But in this game, the fact that there's no added potential to attack makes it secondary to all of the other sides. So the left side is bigger, the lower side is bigger. The right side, if it weren't for the cut at N16, the right side would be small too, because white's group in the lower right corner and the upper right corner, both of those are pretty much alive. So that makes the right side relatively small, except for the fact that there's this cut here, which really heated it up a lot. But yeah, and this black group in the upper right, if at some point black plays this move, it's going to be very close to being alive also. So it's relatively difficult for white to launch any attacks against that black group either. Which makes the whole area, that's what cools down that whole area. In this board position, that black group is gradually getting weaker. So we could see white attacking it. But with this huge fight in the center of the board, by the time white gets around to attacking that black group, maybe white's group in the center is going to be more important. For the time being, obviously in this position, the lower left is getting so active for both players that continuing here is very important. Oh, so black extended there. I was thinking maybe black would be playing here. This seems to be the shape towards the corner where black can get in here or get out here. So this seems to be the shape here, but instead he played here. He played here. So this is threatening to push through on the fourth line, I suppose. But white, I wonder how white would protect the right. Maybe white could play, white doesn't really have a very solid shape to protect the left there, the corner. So that might be what black is, maybe black has started with this move and is going to continue. For instance, if white plays here, black would still have a coal-like shape, which could cause some trouble. Let's see. With something like this. Actually, black's losing the fight to the race to capture, so that's not working. Yeah, so I think it's going to be a kind of a trade then if white plays here. Black can push through, but white will capture the 3 stones here. So this is one of the trades that could happen. Or if white doesn't like that, white will save the stones, and then black gets to escape on this side. So black 2 here is the move that I would be afraid of. Yes. Yes, everyone's talking about Iyama. I do think he's in good form right now. I agree with Bugcat. And let's see. Yes. Yes, the Iyama fans are hyped up, I'm sure. It's it's been a while since Japan has had an opportunity to be leading in a tournament like this, so it's unusual. Although it still is a similar number of players. As I was saying, um, the tournament was very evenly fought until Iyama came on the scene. So no one had had any consecutive wins up to the 6th round when Iyama won the 6th and the 7th round. So he has 2 straight wins. And if he continues winning, it's going to be a definite lead for Japan because there's two Korean players, 3 Chinese players, 3 Japanese players. So it's if Iyama wins today, then it is a step ahead for Japan. But if Lee wins, then it's going to be even, pretty much even overall. China will actually, let's see, pretty much even. China will have a lead. Okay, sounds like we have a move here. This is pretty wild. Okay, so black extended and white peaked. So for the time being, this is threatening the, okay, black pushed through. And this was a threat that white had on the right. But this is where the fact that there's a ko in the lower right corner is part of the equation here. So it's going to be relatively difficult for white to kill this black group, partly because of the ko I was talking about here. So eventually this could happen. And there's also the fact that there's a double peep here, which is annoying for white. So there's this, for the time being, white's probably going to be more focused on the left side, because the left side is really important also. And of course, black has this move, which is a bit painful, but in some cases, black can make a second die with this. This would be really painful because it loses the option of a ko in the corner, or even if black plays here, it's going to lose the option. And so this is something that I would very much doubt that I would see. And it's not very likely. So it's more likely for black to be using potential of this double peep or the ko in the corner. Sorry, not that one. This one, yes. Oh, Bodo W. Thank you very much. Thank you, Bodo. Present. So black pushed through. And white, so on the left there, white's corner, the 2 stones in the corner are sort of hanging on, so they're not going to die yet. White has potential to break through in various places, so it's sort of confusing, not clear which area white wants to break through first. But I would, oh, sorry, I didn't want to do that. Let's see. Let's use this one. Yes. Sorry about that. So my guess would be I want to see white playing here, and that would be my first guess. And for the time being, I think the left side is probably more important than this here. So white can probably afford to sacrifice these stumps. Although it's still a wild fight. And there's always a potential of, let's see, there's, white has 2, 4, 5 liberties here. So if white plays here, black's only winning by about 1 move. So it means white gets to squeeze. So this would actually be a squeeze for white. And it would be okay. Okay, he's thinking. Okay. Um, I must have missed some questions there. Daniel Tome is asking me about Fujisawa Hosei. I did play him once or twice. Um, he was a very strong fighter. Um, and he claimed that he was bad at the opening. But I know a lot of top players who say that, and no one really believes them. They're usually better than most people anyway. At least it always one player who used to say he was bad at the opening. Um, and I can understand that they wish they were better. And no one's perfect, yeah. Okay. And yeah, well, in the game that I played him, um, I was having a bad time, but he had some kind of an oversight, and it worked out well for me in the end. Okay, white's covered. Let's see. I'm not seeing it in this. I might have to change the windowing. Let's see how the board is working. Yeah. I might be in the wrong. I have to go back to the menu here. So bear with me. The move is not coming. Okay, it's this one. Very good. So white covered. And black cuts. Okay, Derek Neal is asking to see a quick the order of the moves. This is getting so heated up that I think I have to keep with the game for a bit here. So I'll try to do that later in the stream. Okay, so white has to save these 3 stones, and so if white cuts here, then black has, if black wants to move with the stone at J16, black has 2 options. So one of them would be this one, in which case white can make 2 eyes like this, unless white can find a better move in the center. For instance, something like this might be, for the time being, it would be forcing. So potentially this would be, well, this would be good for white. So potentially white has the option of playing here. Oh, okay. So this is where he played. The other option was for black to play here, in which case this is the Tetsuji, and well, white had other ways to capture the cutting stone anyway, but this is how white captures the stone. So that's not accomplishing very much for black. So black covered here, and this is the game variation. They're going to continue locally. So white has to play here. Once black has started this, black's going to play here too. And black, the virtue of this for black is that black's group on the right is alive now. Yeah. So this is, yeah, let's just go back to the game. We can see the same variation happening. And the question is, what is white going to do next? Because white would like to find a move in the center. But it could be a bit dangerous. It could be another ko. It sort of depends on how black plays next. So if black plays here, then white will have this forcing move on the second line. And that will change what happens in the center. So if we have something like this happening, it's going to be a ko eventually. So something like this. And yes, a direct ko. So this is one of the things that could happen. It looks like it's fairly good for white. I would say it looks good for white. So when black connects here, Now if we do the same thing, yeah, that's great. I was thinking I wanted to show you this. So if we say then this is sort of locally forcing. You might remember I showed this variation where white gets to squeeze and win the semi. So when black plays this exchange, this forestalls that squeeze for white. And black is going to be one move ahead. So in this case, white might get some stones and some of the extra stones, but black's going to capture the main group. So let's just have black play somewhere around here. Something like this. So this would probably be okay for black. I think it looks... white's lower left corner, it doesn't look so healthy. Black has a nice territory there on the lower side. So that's how the mark move, the triangle there, is working for black. Okay. And so I was going to suggest that maybe white was going to live on the side, but instead he plays here. And this looks like it's setting up another race to capture or a ko. Okay, testing my reading abilities here. So if black pushes through here, at any point white can push here and capture the black stones. So this is going to cut black off. And so if black plays here, white plays here. If black plays here, white plays here. Because the two stones on the left are so weak, black cannot play any aggressive moves. So this is just a ladder. So at this point, black will have to do something on the outside, I suppose. This is actually something that could happen. On the other hand, if black tries to win the semi, and white plays here, black plays here, white plays here. This is actually a local semi which is favoring white. So it's like this. Well, actually, white will play here. So maybe black can get some terrible ko. Like this is just very painful for black. It's not a direct ko. So a direct semi is just going to be a one move win for white, where black cannot win this. If black plays here, still white wins with this move and this. So this is going to be a kind of a ladder. If white had just covered here, then black would have won by one move. So the connecting move here is a kind of a tesuji, a common sumigo-like thing. I should probably make one of these, of this tesuji. So let's see, even if black, so I was showing you that this is sort of a key point here. Even if black plays that point, now in this case, it's going to be a ko, because this is a one move win for black. But white can play this forcing move and make it an approach move ko. So this would be a one move approach move ko. I guess that looks like it's an option, unless white can find a way to attack black in the center. I'm not so sure about this one. White's going to be losing a lot in the corner. White's not alive yet on the side. White has to capture these 5 black stones in the center. And it might not be a good variation for white anyway. So I have my doubts about this variation. If I were white, I would probably be tempted just to go for the ko variation here. And maybe something in the center. Okay, so let's get back to the game. All right, let's see if I've missed anything here. Okay, let's take a quick look at the game moves. I'm sure there's that Derek is not the only person who's arrived late, so we can go quickly through the moves. So you can see white is playing a 3-4 point. In the first 2 games, the 6th and 7th round, Iyama had white and he was playing 3-4 points. So he's changed it a little bit in playing the 3-3 point. I think his playing partly is the fact that he likes territory, and partly I think he's just trying to avoid people using neural networks to research his openings. So he's trying to be hard to predict by playing various moves that are not star points. And in this game, obviously he's going for the territory. He likes to do that. He's very good. I think he's very good at handling weak groups. He tends to have a weak group that seems to be in danger of getting killed in many games. It didn't work out that way in game number 7 of this tournament. He actually had a big moyo, but I think that's the unusual case. And so in this point, the cut at N16 started this big fight in the lower right. And Black's score dipped a bit when Black played this extension. I was showing a variation where Black should play here and extend to get a base on the right side. This is what I would advise if I was teaching someone. This is what I would advise Black to do. And it's the move that gets a better score with the computer, as I saw when I was researching this game before starting my live stream. But I also gave you an explanation of why a human player doesn't want to play that move at R15 for Black, because Black does have this ko here, which is something that he wants to do later. He's looking forward to the ko here to attack White in the corner. And this kind of ko does not get calculated into the score very much with neural networks, because basically the human explanation of that is that it takes Black too many moves. Black needs one more move playing here before Black can get into the ko. So it takes Black a lot of moves to prepare, and when Black loses the ko, it's a big White territory. And so it is relatively difficult for Black to make this work. And that's why they haven't even started playing it in the game. It's something that happens up much later in the game, and sometimes it's not relevant. So that would be a good reason for the neural network systems to give it, to sort of seem to be ignoring it. And so they're fighting in the center. Black's attachment here is a Tetsuji to give Black good shape moving out into the center. And White has this weak group in the center of the board, and he's sort of saying, attack me. And White does have territory. He has some points in the lower right corner, the right side, the upper left corner, and probably he sort of needs, as we saw, he sort of needs one more move in the lower left, but it's an area that could develop into 10 to 20 points. So if we count that as 20 points, then White's going to have something like 40 points. Black doesn't have any big territories to make up for that. So Black has a territory of close to 10 points on the lower side, and a territory that, if it becomes territory, the left side will be close to 20 points. So White does seem to have a small territorial advantage. At this point in the game, Black's territories, especially, they're potential territories more than territories that you can count. And so Black starts a fight here, and White refuses to allow Black to connect. And so that's how this whole thing got started. So this was a forced sequence, and White extended, Black connected. Okay, White started immediately with the center. And so basically, what's happening here, we've caught up with the game. If White had played here, then this would be a ko, but it would be a step ko. So in this ko, White has to win the ko and fill one more liberty to get a direct ko. So it's a bit far in the future for White. So locally, Black has an advantage. On the other hand, if White plays here, first of all, it's not even alive yet, so Black can kill it later, although this would lose the fight locally. So it's not 100% alive yet, and when Black pushes through here, White does not have any good way to handle that. So Black has a number of ways to escape. Eventually, we'll be able to kill the lower side. So locally, this is not working for White. So White could have sacrificed the lower side with the approach move ko, but is trying to do a bit better. In the game move White plays here, White's trying to, starting from the center, basically speeding up the process of filling black's liberties. So, for instance, if black plays here, and then something like this happens, black only has 3 liberties left. So white is squeezing the center, and still is, and this is also a one-step call. So if white fills 1 more liberty, then it will be a direct call. So I think that's the idea with this move for white. Okay, so that was my recap of the game, and actually, if this game was moving very slowly, I would have liked to show you yesterday's game. But maybe I'll have to do that in something separate. Yeah, so black basically has, I was showing you the fight like this. This is a very passive way for black to play. Just because it's allowing white, well, for instance, if white just plays here, this is, I mean here. White's only losing by 1 move. So it's a squeeze already, even if white doesn't choose to play the covariation. So the covariation is when white plays here. And this is going to be a call. Sorry, like this. And so at this point, white will have the option of leaving it for the squeeze or playing here to get a 1-step call. So this is where white might actually leave the position for the time being. So white has that option to squeeze from the center. And so that makes this a relatively passive, a safe but passive move for black. So this would be one option. If black pushes out here, then white's going to play here. And this is going to take the squeeze 1 step further. So in this case, it's probably bad news for black. If this happens, this is a suddenly dead group. So black probably has to play this one. I mean, this one. And so this is actually a loss for black anyway. So that's sort of reducing black's liberties there in the center is a bad idea. In the game black played here. So this is how black is extending his liberties. And it's just these 3 stones, the H line of 2 stones and the one on the I-15 point. These 3 stones are the ones that black has to save. Oh, thank you. Gavin Rooney gave me a present. Thank you very much. Helps my motivation. And black is threatening to push through at the star point next. So the natural move for white is to play here. That would fix white's shape, and black would play here. And again, locally, white is... Oh, white's winning the semi, isn't he? Oh, no, he's not. It's black's turn, so black wins by 1 move. So black wins the semi, and white can play a hane here to make it a step ko. So this would be a 1-step ko in which white has to fill here, and then it would be a direct ko. This ko does have to do with black's group in the center, but it doesn't have to do with the life or death of black's group on the right. So in some cases, black can afford to lose this ko. So this seems to be the most straightforward way to play, unless white can still find a way to squeeze in the center. Black pushes through at d16 after the white group threatens to live white c15. That wouldn't work because of the weakness of white's 3 stones in the center. Okay, Jan van der Steen is asking, Iyama already played matches for 2 days. Do you think condition might be a factor in this game? He did look a bit tired after yesterday's game. And it could be a factor. I think that the stress with these games is relatively low because of the fact that they're playing remotely. And so in a relatively quiet environment, without it being kind of a direct confrontation, I think it does make it, and the fact that the time limit is, especially for Japanese players, the time limit is relatively short. It's just 1 hour apiece, and 60 seconds per move after that, if I recall correctly. Yes, sometimes I'm not so sure about the overtime, whether it's 5 periods or 1. I'm not quite sure in this case, but it's not a big deal for me, although 5 periods does give you some extra time. Does black have options? So yes, so that is a factor, but yeah, he's used to playing 2-day matches, which are much more strenuous, and so he should be able to handle it. Nils is asking, does black have options to trade with L13? L13 is it's just 5 white stones, and white's not going to bother with those stones. It's probably not an option in this case. So what Nils was talking about was, for instance, this double peep here, which would have been an issue if black's group on the right was about to die. But the fact that black is already alive there on the side makes this, it's just territory. So in a shape like this where black is getting into trouble in the center and on the lower left corner, taking these 5 stones is not going to be, it's not going to be relevant. It's not going to be big enough. Okay, I think I have to catch up with the game. Okay, so white did cover here, the shape move, and black covered here. So black has a local advantage in the race to fight, the race to capture, and white is going to have to rely on that ko. He's played it already, yes. So white has this ko here, and after this, white has the option of going after black's side group, which would be this variation. And this is a 1-step ko, meaning that white needs 1 more local move to make it a direct ko. So there's this variation. But you might notice that the moves that white plays in the process of making this ko, all of these moves are worth close to nothing. They're like, the final move at 5 is maybe 2 or 3 points, about 2 points. So white's not gaining anything in the process of creating this ko. So white would prefer, white would prefer to be doing it from the center. So for instance, let's just make a hypothetical variation where we get into something like this, and black has 4 liberties. Although this is not as direct, this goes, just for instance, it's 4 liberties. White actually has to play 2 more moves to get a direct ko. So it's even much less direct than before. It's 1 move further away. But all of the moves that white is playing in the center, 4, 8, 10, 12, all of these stones have some use. 12 is even saving white from the double peep. So there's some use to all of these moves that white are playing. They're useful moves, especially 4. All of the stones in the center here. And so white's accomplishing something in the process of making the ko. So this is the ko that white sort of wants to create. Whereas if white plays from this side, the moves that white is playing, they're relatively small and not so valuable. So it's not so exciting for white. So locally, I wouldn't be surprised to see white continuing with something like this, something like this. This would be, or just something that encloses the black group. So for instance, something like this would be a way to maybe fill more liberties. This would make it 1 step closer. So in this ko, now it's a direct ko. So there is some question of how white is going to fill the liberties or do it immediately or not. But white would like to fight the ko while squeezing in the center, rather than playing very small moves on the side. Yeah, that looks good. Okay. Sam A is asking about the rules for two-day games in Japan. Japan is just about the only country that has two-day games anyway. So basically, even apps that you can have on your phone can use the neural networks to have good positional judgment. So they're something that we can at least use to get a grasp of the game to a certain degree. I would hesitate to say that my phone is stronger than a top Go player, but it is actually fairly strong. So it's a top level, a professional level, top professional level, and it gives good positional judgments to various positions. So something that would be worth looking at. So the players in two-day games or any games, they have to hand over their cell phones just in case. And it's pretty likely that a professional player will have one of those apps because it's something that we use to study. So we have to hand over our cell phones, and with the two-day matches, they have to take that one step further and just make sure that the players don't have access to the outside world. So okay, let's take a quick look at what just happened here. So white played here, and as I was saying, white has ideas of surrounding the black group efficiently. So if we have black play something like this, and something like this might happen, you can see how it's sort of, yeah. So black actually can't get out here. So in this case, white would be enclosing the black group, and it would be this shape where white gets to play very useful moves while squeezing and making it a ko. So this is what white was trying to do there, and black countered with the cut. And white can save the two stones, but it's not as if white will immediately win the local fight. So for instance, if something like this happens, black still has 4 liberties. So if white plays here, it's still going to be an indirect ko. It's a ko that black has an advantage in. And the problem for white here is that white's group on the right, in the center of the board, is starting to look like it could die. So this is a very dangerous variation for white to get into. So that's why white was sacrificing the 2 stones. In the process of capturing these 2 stones, black now has about 7 liberties. So 7 liberties, and in the ko down here, white only has about 2. So if this happens, then it's already Atari. So it's a very distant ko now, if we look from the center. And so white's only option really is to start the ko from the side. So white still has this ko, in which case white needs one more move here to make it a direct ko. And this would, in some cases, this would still potentially kill black in the center of the board. So there is a connection there still. But for the time being, continuing the ko from the center is sort of ceased to be an option for white. Okay, so white attached here. So this was the threat when white played the E10 move, the E11 move, that is. So that's what white was threatening to do with this stone. And so black is playing here, sacrificing the 1 stone. And it looks like this is where the game is at now. This looks like an opportunity for black to return to an attack in the center. So yes. Oh, indeed. They're talking about the game between Goseigen and Hoinbo Shusai. So that's Nils and Bugcat talking about the game between Shusai, Hoinbo Shusai, who was the final Hoinbo. And Maeda Nobuaki was one of his disciples. And the story is that they adjourned the game. They adjourned several times mostly because of Shusai's health issues. And Maeda suggested a move that turned out, it apparently turned out to be the winning move of the game. And it became an issue. And some people say that he did not kibitz and stuff like that. And it's a kind of a difficult thing because before then, in traditional times, it was okay for students to make suggestions like that. And then we changed to the modern times where we had modern tournaments, and then of course it was not allowed. In that game, the move was inside Goseigen's area, which was looking like a territory. There was this Tetsuji that reduced the area. Okay, this is an interesting move in that it's not a direct attack against white in the center. So black's just playing a big move there and trying to sort of surround from a distance. Yeah, I forgot to give you an overall... let's take a positional judgment here. It's not going to be easy. On the whole, the black side there, the black territory was let's see. So yeah, might have found a move inside Goseigen's territory that worked really well, and that's the story. And people talked about it, and then they said it wasn't Maeda after all, and it became a big issue. But let's get back to this game now. So white has, I'd say that upper black is looking a little bit at a move. Let's see, a move here that sometimes works, but for the time being, it's not really working for black. So sometimes black has stuff like this, which can be troublesome. But if we look at it as a direct move like this, it's not working. So sometimes it works in combination with moves like this or moves like this. So it's something that you sort of can happen, but it depends on various factors. So it's a bit distant still, and I'd call that white territory for the time being, so it's about 10 points. White has more than 20 points in the lower left corner, so that adds to be about 30 points. And on the right side, white has two small territories, which add up to probably a little bit more than 10 points. So white has something in the vicinity of 40 points. Black doesn't have any territory at all. But that doesn't mean that black's lost yet. In most cases, black is going to capture this white group on the lower side. But as I was saying, it's still an indirect ko. So at some point, white can play this. And if white wins the ko and plays one more move, then it will be a direct ko. And black's group in the center is not alive either. So when white wins this ko, it means maybe white's going to capture these black stones in the center also. It sort of depends on various factors because white's surrounding stones are a bit weak also. So that's one thing. So there's a lot of uncertainty here. It's very fluid. And there's also the fact that this group in the lower right, eventually it could easily become a ko. If black plays here and here, it will be a ko. So there's this ko that could happen in the lower right. White added a stone to the center. And this pretty much it settles that white group. Black can still cut here. But it's not going to be a very strong attack. White has various ways to handle that. One of them would be to play here and push through here. And you can see this is sort of touching black on the right. It's making trouble for black on the right here. Where the black group on the right side could potentially get isolated. So it's not so good for black. So pretty much connected. That means the black stones in the center here, they're completely isolated. And if black had played at the same point, then it would have been different. So for instance, if we had gotten into a different variation and black had played here and then here, then this would have been an issue where white would not have the same option. So although white might play here anyway, in this case black would be capturing these cutting stones, and that would settle most of black's problems towards the lower side. And white probably, although black's group on the right is isolated, it's probably not going to die either. So that's what white was dealing with this move. It looks like he's pretty happy about the game. So I'm going to assume that white has a slight lead at this point. And it depends on all of these codes that are maybe or maybe not going to happen. So it's really tough to assess the situation. But as I was saying, white does seem to have somewhere in the vicinity of 40 points if we ignore the fact that there's a potential ko in the lower right corner. And the reason we can sometimes ignore that is because it's fairly distant. It's not something that's imminently going to happen. Okay. Okay, let's get back. Okay. So white extended here, black extended here. The idea with this is that if white connects here, black gets a forcing move here. So the issue was that black's group on the left there was not so strong with the open side. So black's trying to establish this covering move on the second line. And white countered by curling around. Obviously, he's not going to let that happen. And usually this is scary because there's going to be a hole here. But black can't really break through. And when black does stuff like this, you might notice that the liberties of black's group in the center are filling. And now it only has 5 liberties. So in some cases, that's going to be bad for white. I mean, it's going to be bad for black if white gets to start a race to capture in the center. So that would be something that would potentially be happening if black uses this double peep to capture the white stones on the right. You can see black only has 4 liberties now, so it's going to be the endgame ko, the approach move ko here would potentially happen from the center instead of from the lower side. Maybe not such a big deal, but yeah. You can see how black wouldn't really want to fill those liberties. And the left side is not working very well anyway, because these 2 points, they're sort of Mia. So it's not working for black. Okay, I didn't fall behind. That's good. Okay, I think Nils is talking about the peep on the second line in the upper left when he says, does the potential of that cut make it easier? Oh, maybe Nils is talking about the cut at I-10. It does relate to the upper side, but you can see white's sort of starting something on the left side here. The fact that this black group is not completely stable is sort of stalling black a little bit. It's making it difficult, relatively difficult for black to finish the right side. And there's also the fact that if we look at the white group on the right, in the upper right corner, that group is 100% alive. So if we look at this position, even if black plays here, this white group, it's already alive here. So black can play the peep here, but black can't get it further into the side than this way. So white has an eye at 08 and an eye on the first line. So white's already alive even if black connects at 3. The fact that this white group is completely alive means that when white does something towards the upper side, when white does something towards the upper side, any moves that black plays in this vicinity, they're not going to have any effect on the white group on the right. So it makes it relatively easy for white, although I picked a very random point to invade there. it makes it relatively easy for white to do that. And so it's not a realistic prediction of what's going to happen, but it's kind of an example that the fact that the group on the right is alive makes a difference. So here black has, okay, let's back up a few moves. They do play so quickly. So black pushed from above, white extended once. And now that covering on the second line, it's not a move that white is thinking of doing. That makes it okay for white to take from the top. So that's what he did. So basically the fact that black can squeeze here has become irrelevant. And I'm talking about black playing here and having this move. If it was a position where white for some reason would want to play here, then white would not allow black to get that forcing move. So to be more exact about what I'm talking about, for instance, if black had just simply connected, then in some cases there's some meaning for white to have that covering move here, just to move out to the center. So getting in black's way before moving out into the center. So this would be a kind of a position where maybe white would be thinking about this crawling move at 2, which would take away that squeeze. But since black covered once and white extended, since they played this exchange, now white plays this way. White doesn't bother so much about the forcing move at a 10. And in this game, reducing the size of the threat. So for instance, if white had played here, then moves like this, the continuation here, would be a fairly big threat. So the fact that there's all these codes that are sort of waiting to happen all over the place means that they're thinking about the co-threats as they continue playing. So if white had crawled here, then black 2 would probably become a valid co-threat in many of the cases that they have these codes elsewhere. Whereas when white connects here, the 4 stones on the left, in some cases, it's more likely that the co-threat will not be valid when it's just those 4 stones on the left. So the potential codes here could be a factor in this choice. Okay, they're playing so quickly. So black went down. This is, I understand this one. So for instance, if black had played on top, it would have been what you might call good aji. But then white would have this forcing move, threatening to connect on the first one. So that would take away black's space and give black a weak group there. So having this forcing move from the corner, it would just be so annoying for black to have to answer once more. So that's what black is doing with this move. It's a threat against the corner. So if white plays away and black plays something like this, you can see that white's group in the corner, it's not completely alive. It could be, and it's not even a ko really. If we give the best, at this point it would be potentially a ko. Locally, white's not alive. In some cases, white can force with this and get alive. So it's getting to be a bit painful for white in this local fight here, where maybe it would have been a ko anyway. In some cases, black can play moves like this to forestall that squeeze for white. And so there's a lot of issues here to do with the corner. So that's what black is doing with the marked move here. Okay. So black's going to win the race to capture and is not really very much worried about the idea of white squeezing out. Black probably could have won even by playing from above. Black could have won the race to capture, I believe. So if we have it something like this, black is going to win the race to capture. But it's a much more clunky way of capturing the 4 stones. In some cases, there would be issues with black's eyes. So that's probably why he chose not to play that way. And to play this way, when black captures the 3 white stones, black can have a living shape. And now they've stopped playing. Okay. So I'm sure that the question in some people's minds is what happens if white plays here? And I'm not sure. But it probably doesn't work very well for white. In this case, maybe black's just going to play here, though. And it's probably still okay for black. So let's see. I heard, okay. So white played the Tari and pushed once. It seems fairly clear that white's planning on pulling out those 3 stones here. So it's going to get exciting again. Andrew Simons saying that it's easy to blunder after lunch break because your blood goes to the stomach instead of your brain. And it does break the concentration sometimes. I think, yeah, Go players are pretty much divided between the types that like to eat a solid lunch, and then the players who don't like the fact that they get full and they don't eat very much during the game. Some people get nervous and they don't want to eat and stuff like that. Okay, so white was sort of trying to squeeze from the center, but black refused to go after the 3 stones. And on the left there, black is not 100% alive, but white also has to worry about the connection in the center. So locally, white can kill this black group by playing here. But might have some issues when black plays here. Let's see, if it's like this, white's full of holes. And if white plays this way, yeah, so that's a problem. And there's also the net. The net here. So black can capture this stone too. So it's not as if black is in great danger. So it's more likely that white's going to focus on this group of stones that white has just created. Seems reasonable maybe to play something towards the center. Maybe a push. White still has to remember that there's a cut here eventually. So white would have to deal with that at some point. So yeah, I sort of expect something like that. Maybe white's going to play from the other side. That's a strange move. I sort of expect white to deal with these stones on the 6th line. Here or here, something like that. YSF Memory is asking, oh, sorry, I did that again. That was bad. Sorry about that. Okay, it's white's turn. Asking me if I plan to retire or not. Not in the near future. C7. Yes, he could have left it. He was putting pressure on the black group. So that's there, Neil. Oh no, it was good golf. Good golf. Saying why did white play c7? It was just because white was trying to put pressure on black. This whole sequence where white has pulled those stones out was sort of unexpected for me. Just because it's not really attacking black. on the left, so it's okay for black. Oh yeah, that's one of the moves that I suggested. Okay. Let's see. Okay, looks, yeah. So black answered here. So white's reinforcing those stones. For the time being, they look like they're sort of connected. There is a peep at the. Let's just show it. There's a peep. There's a peep here. So yeah, ignore white 1. There's a peep at black 2 that could be potentially a problem. And for the time being, white might just be planning on sacrificing the corner. Locally, something like this would be a fairly even trade. So white plays an Atari. Black didn't even bother to take the ko. The ko is still, it's pretty distant. White can play to make a one-step ko. Let's see. I wouldn't be surprised if Iyama is in Vyomi. The game started 1 hour and 43 minutes ago, and Qincheng is he's playing very quickly. So yes, I believe Iyama is actually in Vyomi right now. Yes, there are people in the chat are talking about the senior tournaments. There are lots of tournaments for older players. They like to make tournaments for certain subsections of the professionals. So there's tournaments for younger players, under 18, stuff like that. And then there's some tournaments for the older players, over 50. I think it's over 50, over 40 or something like that. For the old legends, so people who have taken a title at some point and they're over some certain age. There's some variants of that kind of idea. Oh, Go Baduk is giving us the time. Iyama is in Byoyumi and Lee has about 20 minutes. So that sort of matches with what I'm seeing on this server here. So yes, I guess that sounds right. So it looks like white is going to give black the upper side and could come close. On the whole, white does seem to have more territory, but we have to remember all those ko's that are waiting to happen. So it's going to be decisive in a ko maybe later on in the game. It's really hard to say what's going to happen in this kind of game because there's a ko that could happen on the lower side. That's a real problem for black if it does happen. And there's a ko in the lower right corner. So there's some potential problems there. For the time being, white's group in the center, white doesn't really have to worry about that cut yet. So that group is okay. It's pretty close to being connected. Black's group on the left, it does have the net there and it can jump into the corner. So the group, let's just make a diagram for that. Yeah. So if white plays here, black can play here. In this shape, it's really difficult for white to try to kill the black group. So usually this is self-defeating. If white plays here, white can make a ko, usually just killing the whole white group. So it's usually a very bad idea for white to do that. But it is a ko. Yeah, there's all these codes that are sort of threatening to happen. It's more likely, in most cases, as far as territory is concerned, it's better for white to do something like this to get the corner territory and allow black to capture this stone, which is a living shape for black. So that's some of the stuff that could happen on the left side there. After white has played this cut and black is curled around, if black had played here, then white would be able to capture this stone, and so that would be big. So that's what black is doing with this move. And probably a good time for white to play the peep and play here. I would be thinking of playing this, which just gets rid of that threat to a certain degree. There's still some issues with the connection of all white stones on the outside. So white would probably have to be doing stuff to reinforce in the center. But at least white would have about 10 points in the upper left corner, which I would think to be fairly important. I would count that white territory to be something around 10 to 12 points, depending on how white answers the peep. So if white answers here, it's usually going to be 12 points. Or if white answers here, it's going to be more like 10 points. Right. As YSF Memory says, although Chinese have 3 players left and the Japanese have 3 players left and the Koreans only have 2, they're both called Shin. And so that's a dangerous name. Okay, so white didn't peep. White is playing a more solid variation, it seems. But this bump is a bit annoying for me, because white would like to cover on the 4th line, but black's going to play here, and black gets to cut here once. So white has to add a stone to it. So white would probably play here anyway, but now white is cut in the center, so white does have to eventually have to do something about that. Maybe this could happen. And I wish I knew how to pronounce this thing. Maybe Japanese or Chinese name. In case you're wondering, Iyama has been hovering around between 80% to 95% for 50 moves now. So it's a slight advantage for white. And that probably calculates into something like 2.5, 3.5 points. And the AI will call it 80% or 90%, something like that. So it's not such a decisive difference for human players. Yes, the bent 4 death shape and sheen, the pronunciation is slightly different, so it doesn't quite work. Oh yes. So this is the variation I was showing before, sort of forcing that. And black sort of needs one more move. It's not as if it's outright going to die, but it would be bad if white plays the next local move there. So black can handle that by connecting on the 2nd line or by adding a stone to the right. So, oh, he connected on the 2nd line. So yeah. So that makes a living shape. It doesn't completely capture the white stone on the right. Mm-hmm. So for instance, let's see, if white plays here, this could potentially be trouble for black in the corner. So this is something that white could be thinking of doing. It doesn't look so safe for black if white gets to play this thing, and then here, and then here, and here. So let's see, this has, let's see, it has 4 liberties. It means that white's going to win by 1 move. Yeah. So it looks dangerous for black. That variation I just showed you, it's not 100% correct. So don't take it as gospel, but it's the most simple variation. So I'll just leave it there. In any case, this is going to be bad for black. Okay, so where did white play? Okay. White is going after those black stones in the center, I suppose. So when this happens, and black jumps into the corner, before I was telling you that black can live in the corner, it's not true anymore. But the fact that black is cut on the 4th line means that the white group is in danger also. So if white continues to play like this, now locally black cannot capture the 2 white stones, but black, it looks just so dangerous for white on this side. So this is probably not working for white. Although it could be another samurai with a ko or something. Or white might be thinking of just playing here to connect up, and black will have to add 1 stone there. So in this variation, I think white's sort of forgetting about the upper side. After doing all this, it's going to be sort of difficult for white to do that variation on the upper side. Let's just do it anyway, just to show you what I'm talking about. So if white does this and manages to connect up, maybe even capture the upper right corner with something like this, but this group in the center, it's going to die. So, I mean, on the upper side, the whole white group is going to die. So this would be white getting a bit too fancy for his own good. It would not be working. Okay, so this is, what is he trying to do? This is unexpected. So in this case, if black plays here, white's going to play here, just play this exchange, and maybe it's going to back off now. But what if black just plays here? It's not a big problem for black. If white connects, black can pull back here, and something like this is white's losing a lot of territory. If white plays here, black gets the 2 stones. So it's not a problem for black. Let's get back to the game. It's too exciting. Yeah, it's not working. White probably has to connect the 2 stones. I don't really understand what white is doing here, but white will be able to capture some black stones in the center of the board. So maybe it's still okay for white. Okay, so yeah, white hasn't played yet, but white's going to take the 1 black stone in the center like this. And this is a forcing move against black. So if white plays here, then the whole black group is going to die. Well, maybe not. White might have to play something in preparation. Well, it's going to be painful. And if black plays here, it looks like black can live. But this would be too painful with this being a forcing move too. Yeah, so this would be, black would be losing a lot of territory, and it's probably not an option. So let's say, yeah, black answered. And white's going to get these 4 stones in the center. So white could just play here, would be one way, or I would be tempted to try to capture them with this move, which is putting pressure on black on the right side. I think this is still an okay variation for white, where white is getting a territory in the center of the board. Okay, let's get back to the game. We have to show the game position just because it's moving quickly. Okay, so now white starts this, and after losing his eye shape, he starts this. Okay, in this case, it's okay for white to sacrifice those 2 stones. So if we assume something like this, white's going to get some potential endgame. So white's group has 3 liberties, black's group has 4. It means that white can play here and start a squeeze. And this is very useful because white gets to save all of these stones. Let's see, could white do it this way? No, I don't think white could do it that way. Yeah. So it's like this. Yeah. So white gets this squeeze, and it's a lot of points taken away from the black territory. Then white would continue with something like this. Otherwise, black's sort of tempted to play here, but this would have a bad effect on the corner because white can play here, and the corner is in trouble. The black group on the side, that is. So white has this potential endgame. It's looking like it's a pretty safe win for white now. Just because it was supposed to be good for white already, and this local situation is working okay for white. And white gets to play this move in the center. Yeah, I think this is good. Yeah. The ko on the bottom, YSF Memories is asking, at what point will they start playing the ko on the bottom? Since it's an approach move, if we're talking on the bottom side, it's an approach move, ko, and white doesn't seem to have the ko threats for that ko yet, but maybe he's going to use some ko threats in the upper left, on the left side. So it could be happening fairly soon. There's another ko in the lower right corner that could be happening fairly soon. Once they finish fighting in the center, that'll be maybe the next step. Black might try something here in the center, but I would be looking at moves like this. Potential. So like there's some potential with this one. If white's careless and black gets a forcing move here, black can take away these 5 stones. So that would be big. In this variation, white's okay with this move. And black cannot capture those 5 stones. Okay, so it's sort of going along as expected, the local variation here. The cut, yes. The point is that, well, white never had to worry about that cut very much. The cut at that I-10, yes. So let's take a look at that cut going back 2 moves. Just ignore the fact that black's in Atari right now. In almost all of the cases, pushing through here, this is starting a potential attack against black on the right. So it isolates the black group on the right side. And at this point, black would have to immediately start making eyes for the group on the right side. So that's how white can always handle the cut in almost all of the game positions that we had up to this point. So it wasn't quite working for black. And now that white has played this move, That's covering the cut also, obviously. So the cut was not a big issue for white. And it's a net, yes. Jonathan Kettner is noting that it was a net there. So yes, so for at this point it was a net even. I was so busy showing the how it would work earlier that I forgot there's a net here. So it's a net, yeah. Nets, it's embarrassing to miss a net. Yeah, but yeah, so at this point it's sort of irrelevant. So what happened? How Chris Davis is asking, how is this going so well for Iyama, basically? How is Iyama just getting good position everywhere? It goes back. I sort of hesitate to leave the game position because they're playing so quickly. But it goes back to this whole fight here, where it got really messy. And I think it was already starting to look to be dangerous for black. This whole trade here, when black had to play here, this whole sequence, it wasn't quite working for black. We have to remember that black started with a position on the lower side. Earlier in the game, black had a position on the lower side. If we go back to, for instance, there was a position on the lower side at this part of the game. So if black had played, that would have been territory. And as the game progressed, it became contested. Although black is potentially going to capture these white stones on the lower side, it's not a lot of territory. It's going to be less than 20 points. So the fact that white is settling this group in the center and squeezing while having a potential coda, it's a very annoying situation for black. And white already got the payback on the left side there. So after this, it's just a difficult game for black. I'm sort of almost finishing here when I say that. I think that with this fight in the center of the board, with white getting profit on the left side, it already makes up the loss that white took on the lower side with some change coming here. And it's creating this flow of stones which gives white an advantage in the center. The whole game flow is just so difficult for black. It's a position where you don't have good moves, so it was just not working for black on the whole. They probably played a bunch. Oh, they didn't even play any moves yet. So it's black's turn here. Black would like to find something in the center. Let's just assume that's a territory though, because I think it will be. And it's going to be more than 25 points there. So if we count 10 points for white in the two groups on the lower side, that's 35. And then white has about 20 points in the lower left corner, just to, it's actually 19 points plus some thickness. So it's about 20 points. So it's 20, 45, 55. White has 55 points. Black has 11 points in the upper left corner. And let's just put that squeeze on the board. So there's this squeeze. As I read it, this is what's going to happen. The very least that white can do is to get this. So that's about 12 points plus the corner. So it's a bit more than 12 points. 11 points. Oh, actually, it's less than. So that's about 20. It's less than 11 points in the upper left. White does have some potential endgame moves there. So let's say that black has 20 points in those two groups. And about 20 points if black wins the ko on the lower side. So that's only 40 points. And white was having something like 55. So as the territory is, it's already a lead for white. So black has to find something. White has a sizable lead in territory. And black's group on the right side is not very strong. So that is the problem that black has. And somehow black is going to have to try to use the ko in the lower left corner. I believe that is how black would try to get back into the game. So black is starting to try to make eyes here. The most safe move for white. As far as eyes are concerned, the safe way for white to play would be to play here. And that would give white secure 2 eyes for white. Otherwise, I would be tempted to cut in the corner, which is a huge move, and giving up the 3 stones is okay. And it could get a bit more messy when stuff like this happens. It's probably dangerous for black to do this, because the group on the right side is in danger of dying. But this could be a bit too exciting. So white just took. Okay, so that's safe enough. I think this move is making Miai of black covering here, and white's cutting the corner. So as far as territory is concerned, this is the bigger move. White's in view. I mean, black is still has some time. On the server here, I see 15 minutes for black, but on Twitch, Whiskers is saying black has less than 14 minutes now, in time. So okay, back to the game. P19. So Janice German is giving me some coordinates. P19. P19, yes. S17, R19 is going to be a coal. Yes. YSF Memories is asking, has Iyama's been winning a lot domestically as well? Yes, I think he's definitely I would call him the strongest player in Japan. He's fighting some formidable opponents like Ichiriki, and seems to be finding ways to defeat them. So he seems to be sort of digesting his own way of using the AI systems. He never really stopped. Yeah, that Rick is correct. Rick Rubenstein says it when he says he never really stopped winning. There was a period where it looked like some of the younger players might be taking they were starting to take some titles, but right now Shibano doesn't seem to be in the best form. He's losing a lot of games this year, relatively. He's winning a lot too, but he's expected to win a lot. So he's not doing as well as he was for a while there. So it's just Iyama. I think Iyama is sort of sticking out as the top player in Japan. He started out with a very good feel for the game, and he's adding to it with studying with computer programs. So those 2 factors seem to be working together very well for him. Whereas in the case of some players, the AI assessments can sort of get in the way, but it seems to work well with So connecting here at the 2-2 point, or the 2R point, as it is in this diagram, that's the big move. Okay, white started with this. Okay, white's going to get an extra 2 points here with this move compared to what I was showing. Just because white has this forcing move with the connection on the first line. So what I'm talking about is that black would like to be able to play here, in which case black has an eye here and can win the race to capture. Even just leaving it, black is already winning the race to capture. The problem with this is that when white gets a stone at 4, white can connect up to the corner like this. And so this would actually it would be a ko, because black can throw in and play a ko. Obviously, it's going to be a bit painful for black. So, when black cannot allow white to get that connection on the first line, so if black plays here, again, it's the same thing. If black answers on this side, this is just going to be a disaster for black. The whole thing is going to die. So if next let's have, okay, he's getting desperate, I think, but let's have black play on the other side, and white plays here. And again, in this shape, we have to remember that there's a white stone here that is going to force black to answer something on the left. That means white gets to take these black stones from behind. Or if black plays here, now this is going to be a ko. So ko on the upper side. So that's a ko they call it a flower viewing ko, where white doesn't really stand to lose anything. So going back to the beginning, locally black would then next play here to capture the 3 stones. And while I was showing you a diagram where it was like this, and black had captured the stone 4, that stone at 4 is being captured. When black does that in this variation, white gets to peep here. And again, if black plays here to capture the 1 stone, this is going to cause issues in the corner. So yes, so it's white's going to save that stone, making a 2-point difference. So that was sharp endgame, and black is just ignoring it, jumping in the center, and this shape on the upper side is dangerous for black. It could be a ko if white chooses to make it, but of course the center is sort of undecided also. So it looks like white's going to allow black to break into the center. This is an interesting life and death problem. If white plays here, then black gets to capture the 3 stones and has to sacrifice 4 stones on them. This would lose the seme. So black can capture these 3 stones, like this. And okay, he played it. So let's show the game move. I wasn't in time to show you that first. When white plays here, now locally white is going to win the race if black, okay. So white has to play something like this. If black plays here, white's going to win the race to capture. If black plays here, it reverts to the fact that this, again, it's going to be a forcing. So if black can win the race to capture on this side, but white has this move on the left. Yeah. To be exact, white starts with this and then plays it. So it's all that the connection at 3 is causing a big headache for black. And so black covers here, white connects if black answers on this side. This is going to be a kind of a ko, but it's a bit painful. So white connected in the center. It looks like white's going to lose that center territory. For the time being, white doesn't have to worry about the cut yet, but it's something. For the time being, white's going to be okay with this. It's going to be another net. So that's not working for black. And white's connected on the other side too. So it's not as if white's in big trouble. So like if black plays here, white does have to do something. Would probably play something like this. But this is going to be okay. So white's going to lose some territory in the center, but it looks like for the time being the upper side is important enough to make it still a white win. Okay. Got so involved here that I forgot to look at the chat. Okay, so they're still playing here. It's black's turn. He probably still has some extra time. He might be thinking here. Yes. Okay, so black peeped. So that's going to finish black's forcing moves there. It's probably not going to be enough to do anything with the center, though. So black would like, let's just say white is very submissive here, passive, and allows black to play all these forcing moves. At this point, black is probably, it's probably bad for black unless black can cut here. But again, locally, this is still the same net-like shape. And it's going to be difficult for black to get out of that. Like, even if black does something like this, it doesn't look like this is leading anywhere for black. Black only has 4 liberties. It's not going to win the race to capture. So yeah, I can't see anything that good happening for black. Yeah, so that's where white played. So if this goes according to what I expect, it's going to be another win for Iyama, and so Japan's doing fairly well this year. And if they win the tournament, as someone said in the chat, it'll be the first time, was it from since 2006? It's more than 10 years, right? But we do have to remember that China still has KJ and Miyuting, and Korea has the 2 Shins. So Shin Minjung and Shin Jinso. Chris Davis asks, am I going to be streaming this tournament again? Well, there's one more game tomorrow. I don't think I have time to do that tomorrow. So not in this batch of games. That'll be the last game of this batch. So there's one more game tomorrow, which I unfortunately cannot cover. But that'll be it for this batch of games. And then they probably haven't scheduled the rest of the tournament yet. So they were probably waiting to see, as far as I know, they haven't scheduled it yet. They generally tend to wait to see who wins, and then they try to arrange the schedule. Just because various players, they have different schedules. So we don't know when it's going to happen, but I would like to continue covering the tournament. And it's exciting because, as I was saying, there's both Korea and China, they still have some top players waiting. Japan has, let's see, it's Yoseki, and the other player was Ichiriki. Yeah, so Japan has some tough players too. So this is just a peep. And black is saving the stones in the center now. So with this move, black has pretty much saved most of the stones in the center. So let's make a diagram for that. So white plays here, and if white pushes through to cut, black can capture it like this. So that's not working for white. White might have a way to capture. And no, it doesn't look like white can really capture any stones in the center. So black saved most of the center stones, but is still in trouble on the upper side. So it could be a ko on the side, or it could be a ko on the corner. Let's just go through those variations once more. So if black just fills a liberty, then it's an easy win for white. So black's only choice really is, if black wants to fight here, black has to play here. Yeah, okay, that was the game move. Let's show the move. And white plays here, and now it's going to be a ko. If it's a ko in the corner, it's like, I mean, if black answers in the corner, then it's going to be this ko, where white is taking up some profit, and it's still a ko. So this should be okay for white. Or if black plays on the other side, Now this locally, it's a win for black. So however black does the order of 2, 4, and 6, black could just play here. It's the same story. Black's going to win the race to capture. But this is going to be a ko in the corner. Actually, white's going to play here first and then here. So this is going to be a ko. So that's dangerous for black. Okay, so black answered in the corner, and it's going to be this ko. So this is the game situation. Black has no choice but to play the ko here. Okay, so that's about 10, 12, 14, about 15 points for the, let's say it's close to 20 points for that group on the upper side if we count the right side territory. White has about 20 points in the lower left corner, so white has 40 plus the lower right corner, which is potentially a ko. But we'll call it about 5 points. So white has 45 points. Yeah, so black has to win that ko on the upper side, and there's a ko on the lower side. Black has a lot of kos he has to win. So it still does look like a difficult game for black. No, it's not a double ko, okay? And that's actually a common oversight. So Niels is asking, is it a double ko? It's actually not, because white can play here and play the ko here. The other ko that could happen is this one, but once white does this ko, the ko on the left is irrelevant. So it's just a direct ko here. Obviously, it's better for white to take the ko on the left because white's getting profit while playing. Yoseki, yes. Yes. YSM Memories is giving us the Chinese pronunciation because that is a Chinese name. Yu Zheng Shi. He's called Yoseki in Japanese. And white does have some good ko threats, so it's looking good for white. Yes, I believe Shibano was knocked out earlier in the tournament. That's Bugcat checking about Shibano Toranmaru. He was knocked out earlier in the tournament. So they're fighting the ko there. And black's group on the right side is potentially in danger, so white could be using ko threats against that black group later. Let's see. The black group in the upper right is going to be alive, regardless of how the ko turns out. So what I'm talking about here is if white finishes the ko, you have to remember that the life or death of this corner group is an issue, but it's going to be alive because basically black has a potential eye here, so white has to fill this, take away the side, and black has a life in the corner. So either way. So just checking that that was alive. Oh, hello, Stephen here. see. So white still has some co-threats against the left side, and maybe against black's right side, depending how white does it. Oh, okay. So white sacrificed that. Okay, looks like we're entering the end game now. There's still that ko on the bottom there that white could play. White has some co-threats against the upper right corner, and white has some co-threats against black on the left side. So white could play the ko on the lower side now. That would be a one-step approach move ko. Yes, black can save the middle group, but the lower side, just looking at the lower side, okay, so that's YSF memories. It does make the ko smaller on the bottom because black can capture stones, the 3 cutting stones there with K14. But the lower side alone, that's 30 points. About, well, close to 30 points. So at this stage of the game, it's probably even a bit bigger than the lower right corner, which is going to be a ko also. Right, yeah. It's just because it's so big compared to the rest of the endgame moves, as YSF memory says. So big compared to the other endgame moves that the lower side, if white can win this ko, it's going to be big. And white does have ko threats in multiple places, which is a good thing to have in these approach move kos, because if you only have one place where you have ko threats, then they can disappear fairly quickly. But if you have multiple places, there's no way to get rid of them. So let's see, white can probably, the endgame move is the one in the upper right. So white might just play endgame moves while attacking black in the upper right first. Mm-hmm. Okay. Black's co-threats. Black might have some. Black has some co-threats that are not very. Um, Black has co-threats that are difficult to play, so it's a difficult game for black. Black might have some co-threats against white's corner group in the right, but has to be careful about it. So, for instance, if black, yeah, so white's playing there. White will probably, when black pushes through on the second line, white will probably play the connection on the first line instead of keeping it as a co-threat, because that's a pretty big move. The move just played. That it works as an endgame move and also as a co-threat. So that's Kurt Fry checking about that. White jumping in here, it's worth about 5 points. It's going to squeeze the black territory into. Actually, it's going to squeeze black down to 3 points eventually. And so the sequence, local sequence, yeah, the local sequence is white plays here, Doesn't really matter. Black plays here, here. White gets to play here, and black has to add a stone to the corner. So black would play here. And eventually this is going to be just 3 points for black, because black eventually has to capture that stone at 9. Whereas if black had played that move, if black had played here, it would have been closer to 10 points. So 9 or 10 points. So that's about 6 points, and it's a forcing sequence for white. So it's 6 points. Sente endgame move is pretty big. But of course, black didn't have time to play it. This is a point where the next move is compared to black capturing the stone outright with a move like this. This would be bigger. Relatively, this is smaller. So this is a point where maybe white can just play away and take the call. Yes. Oh, our Korean friend, I recognize the name, but I still don't know how to pronounce it. Asking if I have any idea why Iyama got so stronger recently is observed in these games. Training and analysis with AI Go programs. I'm sure that's part of it. I think he's one of the players, in my opinion, working with AIs. It seems to suit him very well because he's sort of digested the answers that these neural networks are giving him, and instead of just memorizing them, the top players in the world, they have to get their own unique understanding so that they have something that works for them and that they can change around when their opponent plays something that's not expected, that they haven't researched. So just researching it is not good enough. You have to understand, and it has to become something that is a part of your style. And so I think Iyama is an example of one of the players who's managed to do that. And the strength of his game, and that he's really good at handling weak groups, and that his middle game towards the end game is the strong point, means that he can gain a lot from learning openings from the computers. And secondly, I think recently the fact that he had to deal with some tough challengers domestically in Japan, such as Shibano Toramaru or Ichiriki Ryo. I would add, I guess, Kyokagen, another player originating from, he was actually from Taiwan, Taipei. I don't want to get into trouble here. Yeah, but having these younger players challenging him, and they're pretty formidable players too, is something that helped him, I believe, improve his game. It's really hard to evaluate Iyama in the international system, just because there's so many strong young players coming up. We have 2 strong Korean players left in this tournament, the 2 Sheen players. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how long he lasts. He really, to be in the top 10, he has to continue to beat the top 2 players of Korea, the top 2 players of China. His opponent, of course, is somewhere around the top 10 also. So it's it puts him somewhere in that area. Okay, when white wins this ko, if white wins this ko on the bottom, we have to remember that black's group in the center is going to be in danger. So that's black has to remember that. That's a problem for black. So black is run out of code threats. Yes, that's a code threat. That works. But black's going to run out of code threats. Yes. Those are the, yes, everyone is remembering the the two Japanese players. Rick Rubenstein is asking, am I surprised that Iyama ignored one code threat already? Well, that was a relatively small code threat, although it did secure a life for that black group in the upper left. White would have won even if he'd answered that code threat, I believe. But it looks like White's going to win the ko. Winning the ko is big enough that it's a good strategy, I think. White still has about 2 or 3 code threats in the upper right. 1, 2, yeah, White has 3 code threats in the upper right. And that should be good enough to win the ko. Mm-hmm. And all these code threats are bigger than what black did on the left side, so black has to answer everything. F13. F13 is probably a code threat. If black plays there and captures the 1 stone, black has a number of ways to do it. So, for instance, let's see, White's going to take the ko. For instance, this would be a way for black to make 2 eyes while cutting off the white group. So that's a code threat. Or even if black plays, I think the move suggested was F13, so it's this move. Even this might work as a code threat because black's alive this way, and this is a ko for white's life in this case. So it's probably a valid code threat either way. O3. Let's just back up a little bit. White could have played O3, yes. Okay, so that was over Zivani asking if white could have played O3 as a code threat. And that's a pretty sharp idea, yes. It does work. And white can continue. Probably would play the Atari as the next code threat and then play here and like this, and would have all these code threats. It might even add to the number of code threats white has. So that was an idea. But as it is, even the game variation, it looks like white's going to win the call. So this is how they have continued. Let's just get back, look at the moves. Black did play F13, and white answered it. Black takes the call. White still has this code threat in the upper right. It's still a code threat for white. So white has 2 more code threats in the upper right, and it looks like black has run out of code threats. And so we should be nearing. By the way, is the sound good enough? I'm sort of late to be asking that, but people didn't comment on the sound. My mic is way over there, so I'm sort of wondering. Oh, good. Oh, that's fortunate. So this is white's code threat. White has 1 more local code threat at the 1-2 point. That's R1. Yes. Well, I'm glad that the sound is good. I usually have the mic up closer, actually. So white's going to take the ko now, and I don't see any good ko threats for black. Um, okay. And that's not a valid ko threat. So this ko threat is worth about 10, 12, 14. So taking the white stones is 14 points. So that's 7 points of white's territory. So that's 21 points. And then one more point in the corner. So it's 22 points. But if white finishes the ko, white will be threatening to capture black in the center. Oh, go Badu Weichi gave me a present. Thank you very much. Oh, white answered it? White didn't have to answer it. But white has one more ko threat there. That's interesting. It was 22 points. And white could have finished the ko, and black would have to capture here. So what I'm talking about... Okay, I'm in a variation now. So white could have played... I think this would be a win for white also. So white wins the ko. It means that if black takes these stones, white can capture the black stones here. So, yeah, probably this way. So that would capture these stones. It's probably good enough. And black would capture here the whole trade. About 60 points for black. Yes, it's a win for white. And if black took those, white would take here. So black would maybe start the ko here. I guess there would still be a ko in the lower right. So instead, white answered it. We're back to the game now. So white answered that. And had that ko in the upper right. Has one more ko threat there. And is going to take the ko, obviously. White can still take the ko in the upper right corner. So that's going to be white's final ko threat. And now black has run out of ko threats. Okay, black took that. So white's probably going to finish the ko. Unless white chooses to connect the 3 stones. That would be the more exciting variation. I think either way it's going to be a win for white. But Iyama does like to make it exciting. Okay, so what I'm talking about here... Yes, in the Ying rules, white would have 2 ko threats, yes. Okay, so if white plays here, I think black has to play here, and then white would play here. And I'm reasonably sure that this is going to be a win for white. Yeah, but he didn't do that. So now we get the other variation in the game, is where white plays here, going after black's group in the center. Black takes, but white has a ko threat in the upper right corner, so white's going to win that ko. Unless black can have a ko threat in the center. He didn't have to make it this exciting. Okay, that's White's final co-threat in the upper right. And Rick was commenting that yeah, in the Ing rules, White would have one more co-threat, and I won't be able to show it because it's an illegal move in most rule sets. But White would be able to play a suicide move at the 1/1 point, or S1, and Black would have to make the 2 icing. So it would be a bad exchange, but it would be a valid co-threat. Okay, so White's going to take the ko. The only question we have remaining is, what about this co-threat in the center of the board? So White takes the ko. Black doesn't have any co-threats. So for instance, if Black pushes through here, even though this is a kind of a suicide-like move, White will probably finish the ko. And since Black's dead in the center, it's not really relevant. It's not a problem for White. So that's not a co-threat. So White took the ko. The question in my mind is what happens if Black plays here. Okay, they're playing it out. So let's see what happens in the game. I would like to think that Iyama has it all worked out. Okay, so Black's going to cut in the center, and the connection of Black's stones there in the center is not perfect. So that's what White is going to try to take advantage of. Yeah. Well, White's probably winning anyway. White's captured on the lower side. White's captured in the center. White's captured on the upper side. So that's 3 areas that White won that were not White's territory before. So that's a lot of profit. Oh yeah, so he just sacrificed it. So White can actually afford to die on the right side in this variation. So he played the simple way. By dying there, he has a lot of co-threats for the ko in the lower left if he chooses to leave it here. White sort of wants to extend in the center once. Black is short of co-threats in this game. Black has 1 co-threat on the bottom side, and then just about nothing. So the ko in the corner is probably not a very dangerous thing for White. Yes, and White will be able to capture 4 black stones in the center. Yes, White did lose. So yeah, that's Bugcat explaining how unusual it is for White to sacrifice such a large group. White got something like 20 points on the upper side in White's territory alone, and that trashed the whole black territory. So that was 30 to 40 points that White gained there. I haven't actually done the calculation, so I can't. It's not very exact, but close to 40 points, I would say, that White gained on the upper side in that fight. white has gained something like 50, 60 points on the lower side. So that's huge. Black only got 20 points back on the left side and less than 20 points there. So it's a lot of points that white is getting. Something like 100 points that white gained on the upper side plus the lower side in the center. And meanwhile, black just got something like 40, 50, 40, close to 40 points. Plus this white group that black has just captured, which is close to 50 points. So on the whole, white is still profiting here. He didn't have to do it in this exciting fashion, but it's still probably a win for white. Let's see. I should count the turn. And the fact that the ko in the lower right is not an issue. And also the fact that white has the option of going back to it at this point. He probably won't. He has enough ko threats to leave it. And he can capture 4 stones in the center. So black has 20 points on the left side. It's exactly 20 points, so that's good. Easy to count. Okay, so that's about less than 60. Let's say it's about 55 points, I believe, on the right side. 75. So then there's this 5 stones that black has captured here. So let's say black has, let's see that. I lost count. 75. Black has close to 100 points too. And white has somewhere in the vicinity of 100 points also, so it's pretty close. White can probably win by living in the lower right corner, but can also capture the 4 black stones in the center. So the move in the center I'm talking about is this, and white has this forcing move, so there's no issue with that. White it's a clean capture in the center. And the ko here, it's probably not an issue, even if white just leaves it. To get the ko, black has to throw in here. And black has 1 ko threat here. But white has all these ko threats elsewhere. So like white could start with this ko threat. White has plenty of ko threats. Okay, so white defended the corner. I think this is good enough to have a comfortable win. Okay, they finished the fighting, and it's an endgame now. I think they've fought enough, they're close enough to the end of the game that they're probably going to play it out. Pretty close to the end. Sometimes you see a player, a lot of the younger players will play it out to the small end game and then resign. So you see that sometimes with the younger players. It's a thing that's become okay to do. So you could that could happen. Okay, is Iyama going to play the attachment R11? Okay. Oh, yes. I wasn't paying attention. Excuse me. Derek Neal says I should plug the Patreon. Okay, that's a good idea. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, so I do have a Patreon page. Let's see, I'm still looking for it. Okay, here we go. So yes, support me at Patreon. And yes, there's um, rewards. So like if you are in the highest tier, you get a monthly teaching game on OGS. So that's good. Or you can go to a lower tier and um, get game records for my broadcasts. Like this one, you can get an SDF file where I posted that at Patreon. Sometimes you get early access to some of the videos I make. So there's some rewards, and the people who support me at Patreon are the people who make this kind of activity that I do here for free for everyone. They make it possible. So, oh yes, he did play the attachment. This is going to be forcing, threatening to live with the white group there. So, so it's a forcing move. Oh, and white won. Okay, so let's get a result up. I think I have a result ready here. Yeah, so white won by resignation. Black is resigned at this point. At this point, there's even some issues with black getting squeezed a little bit. They're capturing the 5 stones. So white is winning, and black is resigned at this point. So he found a good kind of a elegant point to resign the game, you might say, where a lot of players would play on to the end, and then sometimes you see them resigning at the very end of the game. So this is the old style. People were asking some questions about that, about whether it's an etiquette thing where you're supposed to resign. That's not so true anymore. It was probably true about 50 years ago or even more recently, but it's not so common. It's not as mandatory as it seemed to be at this time. So it's not, people don't always do it. And yes, there is one more game tomorrow. Sorry to say I'm not going to be streaming for that. But I hope to be back for the next batch of games. I don't know exactly when it's going to be. But yeah, I'll be looking at the schedule for the next batch of games and some other tournaments coming up. So thank you. Thank everyone for being here to the end, and I'm about to finish. Probably getting close to time for my dinner now. So thanks everyone. It's been various times for all of you. So thanks for staying here. And I'll be back. Oh yeah, see you next time then. All right, goodbye.